First story. I thought Thanksgiving would be different this year, but my mother's constant criticism and a simple dessert led to a family meltdown that left me in tears. Thanksgiving at my mother's house has always been a mixed bag. Every year, she hosts a small dinner, inviting me, my brother, his family, and my sister-in-law's family. It's a chance for us to reconnect, even though we're not what anyone would call a close-knit family. My brother lives in South Africa, and my work has me traveling constantly, so Thanksgiving is one of the few occasions we're all in the same room. To keep the peace, we follow a strict no-politics rule and try to stay civil, but it's never entirely tension-free. My mom, though, treasures this holiday. For her, it's a symbol of family unity, fleeting as it may be. I understand that, and I try my best to show up and be present. But this year, things spiraled in a way I never expected. From the moment I walked in, I could feel the familiar undercurrent of my mother's judgment. She has this knack for slipping critiques into everyday conversation, always passive-aggressive, always under the guise of caring. My career choices? Questionable. My decision not to have kids yet? Concerning. Even the way I dress never escapes her scrutiny. Over the years, I've tried addressing it with her directly, but she brushes it off, saying it's just her way of showing she worries about me. My dad even defends her, saying it's her way of fussing. But it stings, especially since my brother never seems to be on the receiving end of her little jabs. I'll admit, my relationship with her has been strained lately. I went through a rough patch a few months ago. Depression hit me hard, and it impacted my work and personal life. I know she was disappointed, and part of me wonders if that's why her comments seem sharper now. I've tried to move past it, but being around her sometimes drags me back to that dark place, making me feel like a failure all over again. Dinner itself went smoothly enough, though I was already on edge from her earlier remarks. I'd been tasked with bringing dessert, and since no one specified what to make, I decided on something I genuinely enjoy: a maple cheesecake. I put a lot of effort into it, and while it wasn't professional level, I thought it turned out pretty well. My mom usually makes a pumpkin pie, but I've never liked pumpkin. It's one of those things that makes me gag, so I figured it wouldn't hurt to bring something different this year. As I brought the cheesecake out after dinner, I noticed my mom giving it a wary look. Then she announced, almost as an afterthought, that she had made a pumpkin pie as well. That threw me. I asked why she hadn't mentioned it to me earlier, and her response was a casual, "Well, we figured you'd do your own thing, so I thought it was best to have a backup." Backup. That word hit harder than I expected. She went on to cut the pie and started serving it to everyone, barely acknowledging my cheesecake. When someone asked to try a slice of my dessert, she waved it off with a dismissive, "Let's not mix too many flavors at once." It felt like a slap in the face. I know it might seem silly to get worked up over a dessert, but in that moment, it felt like more than that. It was just another reminder that, in her eyes, I could never quite get it right. As she handed me a slice of pie, I politely declined, grabbed my coat, and left. I didn't say much. I couldn't. I was already tearing up, and the last thing I wanted was to have a meltdown in front of everyone. I heard people calling after me, but by the time I reached my car, I was full-on crying. I sat there for a while, feeling ridiculous for letting something so trivial push me over the edge. But it wasn't just the pie or the cheesecake. It was years of feeling like I wasn't enough. Later that night, my mom texted me, calling my behavior rude and immature. She said I'd ruined Thanksgiving and that I owed everyone an apology. My brother chimed in, calling me irrational. And maybe they're right. Maybe I should have just sucked it up and stayed for the sake of family harmony. But at what cost? Every time I'm around her, I feel like I regress into this insecure, anxious version of myself, a version I've worked so hard to move past. Now I'm stuck in this loop of guilt and resentment. I know my parents are getting older, and I hate the idea of wasting what little time we have left together. But I also hate how being around her makes me feel. I don't know how to bridge that gap or if it's even possible. All I know is that something has to change, because I can't keep doing this every Thanksgiving. Second story. My sister abandoned her family. Now my mom wants me to take care of her kids while I'm still settling into my new home. AITA for refusing? Let me tell you, I'm in a complete mess right now, and I honestly need some outside perspective. So buckle up, because this has been one emotional roller coaster, and I need to know if I'm being a complete jerk, or if I have every right to stand my ground. My name's Anna. I'm 32, and I've always had this kind of unique position in my family. Growing up, my older sister Sarah, 36, was basically the golden child. Everything she did was praised, even if it was a disaster. She could mess up a whole room, and somehow it was always just a mistake or a learning opportunity. Meanwhile, I couldn't even spill a drink without hearing, "Why can't you be more like your sister?" You get the picture. She could do no wrong. Me? I was always the one getting compared, getting told I didn't measure up, and I was fine with it, kind of. I tried to find my way, but deep down, it stung. It really did. Fast forward to now. Sarah's married to Mark, a guy who's great, honestly, and they have 3 kids, 2 boys, 6 and 4, and a daughter who's 8. I don't have any kids of my own, but for the past few years I've been grinding away at 2 jobs, saving up every penny I can to buy my first house. It's been exhausting. I've had my fair share of struggles, but the payoff was worth it. I finally closed on a little place last month. It's not a mansion or anything, far from it. But it's mine, I worked for it, I'm proud of it. So let's get to the real drama. Sarah and Mark have been having problems for a while, but a few weeks ago, things took a major turn. Sarah decided she needed a break. And when I say break, I mean it wasn't just from Mark. Nope. She needed a break from being a mom too. One day, out of nowhere, she packed a bag and left. No warning, no plan. Just up and left her husband and 3 kids. Now Mark is scrambling to figure out what to do. He works long hours, and now he's trying to juggle his job and taking care of the kids, who are bouncing between my mom's house and his cousin's place. It's chaos, and I can't even imagine how hard it is for him. But the real kicker came when my mom called me last week. She basically said, "Well, Anna, you've got space now, so why don't you take the kids in for a while? They need stability right now while Sarah gets her act together." I was speechless. I mean, seriously? I just moved into this house. I'm still unpacking, barely getting my life together. I don't even have furniture in half the rooms yet. I can't just start taking care of 3 kids. And honestly, I was shocked that she would even suggest it. So I told her straight up, "Mom, I can't do that. I've got a ton of things to figure out myself. I'm not even settled in here yet, and I'm definitely not equipped to take on the responsibility of 3 kids." And that's when the guilt trip started. She hit me with, "They're family, Anna. They need you. You're just being selfish. And well, you don't have kids, so it's not like you have anything else to focus on." I can't even explain how much that pissed me off. I just lost it. I told her, "No, Mom. Sarah is the selfish one here. She's the one who just up and left her kids. Why should I put my whole life on hold because she can't handle hers?" That didn't go over well. She started crying and calling me heartless, telling me I was being cold and ungrateful. And now the whole family is divided. Some people are saying I'm right, that it's not fair for me to suddenly become the caretaker. Others are calling me a monster, saying I should just help because they're family. But here's the kicker. Sarah hasn't even bothered to call and check in. She's been posting Instagram pics, living it up in who knows where, acting like she doesn't have a care in the world. Meanwhile, Mark is struggling with everything on his own, and the kids are just stuck in the middle of it all. I feel bad for the kids, I really do. But I didn't sign up to be their mom. I worked my butt off to get where I am, and I don't think it's fair for me to just drop everything because Sarah decided to walk away from her responsibilities. I'm not the one who made this mess. So, am I the a-hole for not wanting to take in my sister's kids? I just need some honest opinions here, because right now it feels like I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place. Third story. AITA for banning my mother-in-law from our home after she called my autistic son weird during Thanksgiving. For years, I've had to bite my tongue every time my mother-in-law, sister-in-law, and other extended family members would sit around and trash talk their own. The things they'd say about their own family, including the sharp comments about my mother-in-law's grandson, who happens to be autistic, were enough to make anyone uncomfortable. It's not like I didn't try to speak up. I'd tell them that it wasn't appropriate, or I'd simply walk away. But the comments kept coming, and I found myself constantly on edge. Now, I've made it clear to my husband many times, if his mother ever disrespects my family, she will not be welcome around us again. It was a boundary I thought I'd never have to enforce, but sometimes people don't understand until it hits close to home. This Thanksgiving, things took a turn. My mother-in-law, who lives several states away, came to visit. We don't see her often, maybe once or twice a year, but lately she'd been talking about buying a house nearby. I was hopeful things could go well, but I had this nagging feeling that something would happen. We were all gathered in the living room when I heard my son down in the basement. He's a teenager now, and like many autistic kids, he has his routines. He was running on the treadmill and talking to himself, nothing out of the ordinary. His voice carried up the open stairwell, but it wasn't loud. Still, it must have caught my mother-in-law's attention. She asked, "What's he doing?" I replied, "Talking to himself." Then she asked, "Why?" I said, "It helps him feel good." And that's when she dropped it. Without hesitation, she said, "He's weird." Now let me tell you, this wasn't a joke or a playful comment. She said it with complete seriousness, like it was an obvious truth. I felt my blood boil. Without thinking, I snapped back, "Well, you're weird." And I walked away. I was shaking when I went upstairs to tell my husband what had just happened. The words just kept repeating in my mind. Weird. How could she say that about my son? This is his home. It's his safe space. If he wants to talk to himself in a way that helps him feel comfortable, who is anyone to judge? And if she felt comfortable enough to say something like that to my face, what on earth was she saying when I wasn't around? I made it clear to my husband that she was no longer welcome in our home. He didn't understand at first, but I told him this wasn't about just the comment. This was about the years of disrespect, the years of me brushing off inappropriate remarks, and now, this final straw. My son shouldn't have to mask who he is at home, especially not in front of people who are supposed to love and accept him. My husband said he'd talk to her. He came back, looking like he had the weight of the world on his shoulders, and told me that she apologized and realized what she said was wrong. She was sorry and promised it wouldn't happen again. But here's the thing. I've heard this before. Every time she said something inappropriate about a family member, I've called her out on it. She always apologizes, but nothing ever really changes. This time, it was different though. It wasn't just a random comment. It was a direct attack on my son, and I couldn't just let it slide. He insisted we work through this, that I should give her a chance to make it right. But I couldn't. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was an attitude problem. If she could call my autistic child weird, then I could only imagine the things she'd say when I wasn't around. I didn't want that kind of negativity in my son's life. I didn't want him to feel like he had to change or hide who he is just to be accepted by family. So, I stood my ground. I told him, I'm not responsible for teaching her manners. My son's well-being is my responsibility. If she wants to work on herself, she can come back later, after she truly understands what she did wrong, and show me she won't act like this again. But until then, she's not welcome here. And now, I'm wondering if I'm in the wrong. Was I too harsh, AITA, for not wanting her around anymore?